It is the Anfield Wrap. I'm Neil Atkinson. I've been away for a week. Quiet?
Nothing happened at all.
Quiet? There's a lot to get through. I've got Ian Ryan, I've got Neil Jones, I've got Kieran Molyneux. We're going to start and do Fabinho first and Henderson second. A couple of reasons for that. One is that Fabinho feels as though it's much further along the line. Henderson still has question marks around it. We'll talk about them. So many question marks around the Jordan Henderson situation. The first and foremost one being, what? Why? And how do they not have any money? What was Liverpool's plan is where we're going to start. Ian Ryan, it looked to me like there was a plan which was that Fabinho would do at least one more year with Liverpool and a footballer was going to come in who was a medium to long-term plan to replace him. You don't have to have that be part of your job as a footballer. You can say you'd rather go somewhere else, or you can be tempted by an offer or all that sort of stuff. I feel as though that's happened, and it's got to the point that for Fabinho and for Liverpool, the offer is one that's very difficult for them to refuse.
Yeah, I think it is. I think if you start to look at the figures and you're talking about recouping the money that you paid for them 5 years ago, it becomes a very difficult conversation to say no to. 40 million quid. I think if you're asking all of us, certainly middle of last year, even if it took 40 for Fabinho, you're snapping someone's hand off because he was in such turmoil at certain times last year. And don't get me wrong, he does find himself a little bit towards the end of the campaign. And I think that almost coincides with the shift of Trent to that hybrid role where all of a sudden he's got legs next to him and he looks a little bit better. But I think for large parts of the campaign, you're looking at a footballer and thinking his best days are behind him. Now, listen, there may have been a scenario, we probably won't know now, where he could have found himself again over the course of a long campaign and maybe got back to somewhere near his best, given he's only 29. And I think that's always the striking thing. And I think it did catch Liverpool on the hop last year, just in terms of how much he dropped off. I don't think anyone saw that coming because of the age. Yes, he's played a lot of football, but I don't think people really envisaged him falling off to the extent he did. So when that money comes along, I think it's a hard one for Liverpool to say no to.
I'll come back to you, and it's interesting to me that he's eager at the age that he's at to go. It does feel as though he wants to go, and without sort of being, overstating it, there's a universe where Fabinho could win another European Cup. You could go to someone like Bayern Munich, conceivably. Not to say that, but if this had happened, you wouldn't think it was mad. I'm not going to say that simply going and playing in Saudi Arabia is a bit like semi-retirement, because I don't know enough to make that argument in an entire way. But it certainly isn't the idea you're at the business end of the hard edge of top-flight European football. It doesn't look like that. And yet he wants this, and to me that is quite interesting. He's not 33; he is 29. Yes, there will be a lot of money on offer, but he wants that. And if more than anything, that to me says, well, the time is right then. Because if this is what you want at this point in your career, have you got the stomach to rebuild this stuff at Liverpool?
I think it becomes very difficult when you've got a footballer who is determined to leave to then kind of switch their attention back onto things that are important to you, i.e. a campaign for Liverpool. That is going to be, we know it's going to be difficult because of all the challenges that we face. So it looks like his mind's made up. I think it's a little bit sad in a way, because you are talking about a player who should still want to compete, in my opinion, at the very highest level he can. But the money on offer is obviously turning heads, and he's not the only one. And there are, there's different kind of backstories to each one. There's certain players who are going over there and it is right at the end of the career, and you can look at it and go, well, they're after one big last payday and they've done pretty much everything there is to do in the game. But for me, looking at someone who's 29, as you said, there's other things you could go and win. And I think, there is a point around how much money do you want, how much money can you earn. Don't get me wrong, people will have different views on it and say, well, listen, the more you've got, the more you want, all that. For me, I do feel it's a little bit of a sad case where you've got these footballers who have still got, I think, years to give at a higher level, suddenly deciding that they're going to go and play in a league that, let's be honest, we don't know loads about it, but it is far and away removed from the standard we're talking about, which is the Premier League and other leagues as well. So, yeah, but not that surprising, Neil. I mean, there's lots of players now who seemingly are attracted by the offer, and I don't think it ends here, by the way, either.
I don't think it ends here. On Fabinho, Neil Jones, I think there was times in the ground last year. I've seen the manager. I've seen Liverpool players. There was a period where it looked like no battle laughs being Trent Alexander-Arnold with Jordan Henderson and Virgil van Dijk shouting at you all match, and then you'd flip sides second half and you'd have the manager there as well. This is what football is. It's part of how the game's played. There were points last season where it felt like the manager with Fabinho from the sidelines, it was a step beyond the norm. I really felt at times it was a step beyond the norm, and some of Fabinho's reactions was a step beyond the norm as well. And I just sort of get the impression Fabinho just did not enjoy his last 12 months of football here at Liverpool.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't have really, should he? I mean, he didn't play well. I mean, I know what you mean. There was a moment he turned around and shushed the cop at one stage, didn't he? I think last season. I'm pretty sure that was last season, where he sort of said, just shut up, basically. And there was definitely one where he was arguing with Klopp for probably 30 seconds while the game was going on around him about not passing the ball forward enough or not pressing. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that we haven't really factored in this is his agent is George Mendes, who is loading up that league with his people. I mean, he started it with Ronaldo. Obviously, Nuno is one of his clients. Jota, the other Jota, has gone over there from Celtic. Ruben Neves has gone over there. So I think he's quite influenced by what the agent wants him to do, in the sense of that, you know, he's never let me down before. This is now he's seeing this coming, and to be honest, if you're going to follow the people in this Saudi story and sort of be convinced that it's going to be okay and it's going to be legitimate, I think you'd be following the agents, because they're not going to send them there where they're going to end up in this position where they're not getting paid, or, you know, the bubbles burst after so many months. So there's other reasons as well for why he's going over there. But I think from Liverpool's point of view, I think it's not the apocalyptic scenario that it would have been 2 years ago when Fabinho's been taken out of your team, because they got a little look at it last season. You know, he was taken out of the team because he was playing so poorly, and they brought in an 18-year-old kid to play instead. But the timing of it and the fact that it's come probably a year earlier than they expected, at least, I think leaves Liverpool in I would say an exciting situation, but I would also say a frightening situation as well.
It is most definitely a rollercoaster, Keo. The year earlier, I think, is the key part of this. It is just 12 months, but when you are trying to sort of build and plan, and I think Liverpool, people can not like the way Liverpool have chosen to build and plan, and can act as though, therefore, there hasn't been building and planning. I think Liverpool did plan for last season. They did have a plan around it. It just goes wrong because they're not on top of where the level of the footballer is physically and possibly mentally in a couple of cases. But they did have an idea, and I think the idea was there was at least one more year of Fabinho, and for at least 6 months of that year he was going to be first choice. And I think that does sort of throw Liverpool's medium to long-term plans a bit up the wall.
That's what's throwing everyone off a little bit. I think if we were going to say goodbye to Fabinho, or Liverpool had any plans to replace him, we'd have said ta-ra to him on the last day, the same way we said ta-ra to Chamberlain and Keita, etc. And don't think there was any plan there for Fabinho not to be in our side this year. Having said that, you touched on a point there when you said it probably right time and meant to happen. If he wants this move at 29, and as Ian pointed out, he doesn't want to fight for Liverpool, he hasn't got the hunger in him to bring us back to where he was. Maybe that's what was happening last season. Maybe he just lost that little bit of hunger. Maybe he's just not the player that he was. And if that's the case, then fair enough.
Fair enough is right. The other thing is, Neil mentions there about Klopp being frustrated with him. It's dead interesting that the thing he used was not passing the ball forward enough. Because I've always felt when you watch Fabinho, there's an eye test and a stats thing at the same time. If you feel Fabinho's not playing very well, and then you check the numbers afterwards, and he's not passed the ball forward very much, there's a correlation there. I always feel as though the best Fabinho was constantly looking to drive the play. And that's to begin to think about what they might want to do when they bring someone in. I think you can think it's your deepest line midfield and it's your holding midfield. He's got to win his battles. But I think Liverpool also wants someone in there who's driving the play, who's able to make the play, who's able to put Liverpool on the front foot, who's able to pass forward. And I think that's something they're going to be looking for.
Yeah, and we all hoped that was going to be Fabinho last year, but it wasn't. It just wasn't at all. There was a period, as you say, we got dropped for an 18-year-old lad. That's how bad things were getting. There was a couple of moments where he was arguing with the manager. It's the Brighton one that stands out for me, where the cameo at Brighton, where he come on, and it was just an absolute mess. He got sent off. It was just all over the place. So, for me, it's one of them things. If he doesn't want to be at Liverpool, then he doesn't want to be at Liverpool. Move him on, and I think I'll be fine with that. It's whether, as we move on in the sec, whether both go.
Neil, the idea of what they want, a number of names, you've written them down. I'm sure you've received them from trusted people. There's other footballers out there as well who might not be on that list, who Liverpool might be looking at. I think we sort of, to an extent, all pretty much know the players. I think you can get yourself, that's not to say that there might not be something that's still left field, but you'll be able to pretty quickly find out about some X or Y be playing in this type of league, this type of player. For me, what's most interesting is, what do we think the type of player is? What do you think the type of player is?
I honestly don't know. And I had a conversation with someone just this morning, sort of around Liverpool, about concept, and that being the most interesting part of it all is, do you do the tribute act, and you sort of say, well, we need a Fabinho, so who do you go and get? Do you do the complete revamp, and you say, okay, Trent, time to shine, boy. Go into midfield. We'll go and get a right back. I think it's on the table. Do you do the one where you say we'll just get loads of midfielders and someone will gravitate naturally and become our linchpin, and then we'll work everything around it? Do you go down the route that you were always going to go down in the longer term and get in someone like Lavia, but just say to him, you're gonna have to do it now, mate. Like you're gonna have to be our man now, possibly, because if you think he's the long term successor, then he can be the short term successor as well. If you think he's talented enough and you think he's you think he's got that skill set, do you do what Liverpool do? I've done in the past, and do you say, don't panic, we're not going to do much, and risk the wrath of the world that's going to come down upon you? Mate, do you say, what we're going to do this summer is we're going to just spend absolute bucket loads now on a centre back that we weren't going to spend bucket loads on, and we're going to hope everything else holds together, or a forward that we're going to get? There's so much that he could do. I think they need 2 midfielders. I think they need to sign 2 midfielders. I think they need to sign the Lavia and the Fabinho. I think they need 2 players now. They need someone who's going to be on the team sheet.
If Fabinho goes, you need 2 if Fabinho goes.
Yeah, I think so. I think Henderson will go as well.
So, but if Henderson stays, do they need 2? Do you think?
I think they definitely need the Lavia if Henderson stays, but I would lean towards that they would need 2 as well in there. Because
it's hard to see who gets to get, because you run out of games quite quickly for people. If
you do, but you don't, because I'm telling you now, by the end of August, 3 of them will be injured. by the end of the Karlsruhe game, there'll be a doubt over someone. Someone will come back, or there'll be and let's also, there's another elephant really. Who's next? Like who? If Jordan Henderson's head can be turned, then you need to be worrying about other players of the club. There's a few players on the wrong side of 30 at Liverpool who have had a lot of criticism, and if they're on a downward, if they feel they're on a downward spiral, and someone comes and says to you, "I'll give you this," you need to be ready.
Well, before I bring Ian in, because one of the things that I think on this, it felt to me, I didn't think for a second when Liverpool were going to start, certainly get to the 1st of September, Keogh, and Joel Matip was still going to be at the club. Now, it comes out last week that Liverpool might be thinking about a new deal, but there is a thing, isn't there, where one of the things that Liverpool could end up doing here is buying a lad who's maybe an over 25 number 6 who can also do something for them at centre half, buying another younger number 6, and buy another centre half, someone like Colwill as well, and remodel that whole area. That's when Neil's talking about moving parts, that's a moving part. That's something the club's got to think about, because there is an argument that you can not cover 2 things with one player, but you can look at a player and go, well, if he can give us this and this, then that frees us up a little bit. And I wondered if that might be part of the thinking as well. The point is, it's all up in the air.
I think it's definitely going to be part of the thinking. I think versatility is going to be one of the main factors in who we sign here, because as you've seen, when the new position, the new role for Trent, when we have the ball, he joins the midfield. It leaves 3 at the back. If Robbo then bombs on, that Fabinho position is the one who comes back into the centre half and forms a 3. So I think versatility, I've mentioned before, I don't think it's likely, but Kimmich plays holding midfield, he can slot in at right back, and these type of players are players that we're probably going to be looking at, one who can do more than just the tribute act role of just replacing Fabinho like for like.
What do you want at this point? Presuming Fabinho is going, and we'll come on to Henderson in a minute and we'll loop it sort of back round. Like, what I think versatility is dead interesting, because I think there's a bit of a thing where there is currently this vogue for instance, the inverting the full back, going to a 3, players doing more than one job at once. But in 18 months, it could be back to pretty set formations. This is the best way you way home in the Premier League. For me, the versatility point, I think, is if Liverpool are doing 2, I think it's really important, because you want to be getting the most out of every single footballer you can. I'm intrigued by the versatility thing, but as I say, it might be that tactical versatility is in now and it's out in 12 months and all this sort of stuff.
I think versatility and flexibility will always be at the forefront of the manager's mind, especially when he's got to operate on a a lesser budget than some of the others. I think that's really, really important. I think the other thing about all this midfield upheaval is the knock-on effects. So when we're going into this transfer window, I am keen to really reinforce what's going on behind the midfield in terms of those defensive options. I think all of a sudden you're now staring down a barrel of a shitload of stuff to do. And what does that mean in terms of maybe bringing other bodies in? So that then plays into the versatility and the flexibility bit, where you want lads who can maybe operate in a couple of different areas. But who that is, Neil, that is the, the $64,000 question. And I think this has caught Liverpool on the hop a little bit, because whilst I think they would have accepted we maybe move on one of the three experienced players, so your Fabinho, your Henderson, your Thiago, I think they can accept that one of them may have left the door, but to suddenly lose two of them, and that's not to say that they would have wanted to start two of them in every game, probably not, because we've seen all of them, certainly in Fabinho and Hendo's case, they're on a bit of a decline, whereas Thiago's more of an injury thing, I think. So yeah, this will have caught them on the hop, so now it's, how many do you get? I mean, if Henderson and Fabinho both leave, they have to do two. They simply have to do two.
Yeah.
You can make a case for it anyway, to be honest, even if just one of them goes. And I'm with Neil. I think Lavia may well be one that comes through the door. And I think there's loads of potential there, but we've seen, even in the games against us, there are going to be one or two mistakes because he is 19 years of age and you've got to cop for it. And if he comes through the door, we're all going to have to accept that he is going to, at times, be exposed and make mistakes. The manager will have to accept that as well. But I think they do have to be leaning towards someone a bit more experienced as well.
So
because, well, yeah, that's
the same list of names.
It doesn't inspire me, Neil, if I'm being honest. The list does not inspire me. And I think that's a problem. And, again, back to the budget thing, there are other players who will have moved in this window or are about to move that probably are, because of reasons, that the club choose to kind of operate under certain guidelines. They're out of the reach. People like Caicedo, who may well end up at Chelsea, but, I don't think Liverpool have ever been in the running for him, really, if I'm honest, and I'm not sure they ever would be in the running. But someone like that style of footballer who is able to, in my opinion, mitigate a number of issues is someone that you should. And
can I just push on the Caicedo thing quick? Because for me, I feel as though, I think there's question marks over Caicedo. For instance, has Caicedo performed that much better for Brighton than Basuma did? Basuma's gone to Spurs and not done a great deal. And I'm my minor, very small Alexis McAllister concern is I wouldn't want to buy a player from Liverpool. If I was running a football club, I actually wouldn't want to buy a Liverpool player because of the specificity of what the manager asks and how all that operates. I am a little bit, as I say, if Caicedo could go on and become an absolute world beater. This is, but there was a lot of people saying, for instance, 12 months ago, Liverpool should have been all over Basuma. And maybe now in hindsight, you can make that argument, and that if you'd have had the sort of 12 months that he's just out of Tottenham.
Maybe they will be.
Or maybe they will be, exactly. Well, I think, I genuinely have run some numbers this morning, Neil, and then Ndombele has got my attention. There is, my point here, Ian, is that it would still, we're talking about a lad who's got 45 senior appearances in the Premier League or something like that in Caicedo, and it is an unbelievable amount of money. And even over someone who's an unbelievable amount of money, if we were linked with him, even putting the money to one side, there'd be a bit of me going, could just be a bit of a flash in the pan, this. And that's the madness of trying to recruit in this position at this point.
Yeah, and I think, let's be fair about it. When you're signing most players, there's always an element of that, unless you're signing an absolute worldie, and even then, sometimes things cannot work out as you plan. But no, I get the point, and it's a small sample size, but there's lots of footballers who are going to demand big fees, and there's only a small sample size. Liverpool
absolutely.
are interested in
Florentino Luis has only got one senior season at Benfica.
Well, let's look at the Chelsea centre half that everyone's chasing, Levi Colwill. He's played 17 games for Brighton in the Premier League, and people are talking about extortionate fees for him because you're paying for potential. And I think with Caicedo, whenever I've watched him play, I've always been pretty impressed. I have to say that, and I think he is going to go on and have a stellar career, and he is still a young footballer. And some of these lads will go on different journeys, but I think you can almost look at a player like that and think if Klopp got the hands on him, you can kind of imagine what he then goes on and becomes. And he can play in different positions. So I think when you're talking about flexibility, he can fill in a player at right back. And that's where those kind of footballers are attractive. Don't get me wrong. That's not me saying he's absolutely worth that money, because it could get silly. Declan Rice is a brilliant player. Is he worth over 100 million quid? Probably not. But he might be worth it to Arsenal. He was certainly worth it to West Ham. So, and it's not my money. So, and if he's the best one about, then I don't particularly care. As long as someone's putting the money down, you're bringing him in. And I know you've got to balance the books and all that at certain times. But sometimes you just want to go out and get the best in the business. And you might have to overpay a little bit. Liverpool, for me, probably aren't in that market. And that's why you look at a list of names that, listen, Klopp could get hold of him, turn him into something special. But when you're seeing people like Calvin Phillips, who's had a really tough time at Manchester City, I'm not jumping off my seat and thinking, fucking hell, that's one that we need to be getting through the door.
I'll come back to you on Phillips. There's a couple, I think the two that strike me of names that have been bandied about. I've got a couple that aren't bandied about, and I'll ask you all for a couple that aren't bandied about. But the two that are bandied about that strike me as could be interesting are Gravenberch and Luis. Now, Gravenberch hasn't played as a pure six a great deal, but has clearly shown he's got a ceiling, he's got a ton of potential, and would still be a gamble. Luis hasn't got as I said before, he's not got the year before this one just gone. He's on loan at Getafe, he's on loan at Monaco, and then he comes back and he excels for Benfica. I think Benfica always had a bit of an eye on the idea that they may well flip Fernandes and stuff like that with him in there, but does really, really well. The numbers sort of underpin it. They're the two separate to Lavia, because Lavia is almost a bit of a different thing. They're the two that have got my attention as ones that feel like the viable ones in terms of the replacements.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. And I think, in terms of Florentino Luis, that seems to have gathered a little bit more pace. What is he, 23, nearly 24? Is he something like that? So, I mean, I've not seen loads of him, to be honest. I can't even recall whether I've seen him play once. So it's very hard for me to say. So he didn't go, he's exactly the kind of player Liverpool should be buying. He might be. And listen, if they bring him through the door, I'm sure there'll be a reason why they're doing that. And again, some of it's back to, well, you look like this now, but what do you look like under this manager? And I think, some of these players will go on different journeys depending on, if they get signed or not. You mentioned Casilla before. If he does go to Chelsea, that is a scenario where, despite me raving about him, it could go to shit because you're going into a basket case and you don't quite know what you're going to get from that football club. So, in terms of Gravenberch, I don't think he's ever really played as a sole number 6. I think he's maybe done it as a bit of a double pivot. He's done loads of stuff in the number 8. Again, he's still a young footballer. Hasn't gone particularly well for him at Bayern. So there's a lot of unknowns there. I think for me, you almost wanted Liverpool to act with a certain amount of certainty in this window as much as you can. And that feels like the rug's been pulled a little bit.
That was happening, and now it's not happening.
And you can take some of this back to previous seasons where, and I know this is a curveball that no one really saw coming, but when last year they failed to evolve when they probably should have done, that puts them on the back foot. And then you're going into this window, and guess what? Something like this happens, and you're even more on the back foot. So they're playing catch up a little bit anyway, and then they get thrown this curveball, and it is a massive curveball.
We'll park Lavia for a second, Neil, because I think that Lavia, I'm not saying Lavia was definitely going to happen in the other universe, but I think it felt like it was the likeliest course. It could be Lavia that finds the situation is a little bit undermined. Gravenberch and Luis have both got more senior football than him. And of all the names that have circulated quite quickly, Gravenberch, for instance, has got a massive concern over playing time. Well, I think Liverpool can answer that question. Certainly if Henderson goes as well, relatively quickly, you're going to play games of football, mate. Luis, I think, will be a lot of money. I think you're looking upwards of 60 million, realistically. But they're the two where the age profiles not at either extreme here, sort of the other side of 26, 28 on the one hand and not under 20 on the other. They're both physically quite imposing. They're the two that I feel are maybe not just your Fabinho tribute act, but maybe your Fabinho plus. Potentially, I mean.
Possibly. I mean, Luis is similar to Fabinho style-wise, isn't he? He gets to do loads of defensive work, physically good. I look, you asked Ian, who's the one who jumps out? He doesn't jump out, but if you wanted to play it safe as you could, I think Amrabat is the one that jumps out because you know what you're going to get from him. So you know where you're building from around it. You know he's fit. He plays games. He's 26, is he? He's played at a decent level. He's played in the Europa Conference League final, Serie A, World Cup, done well in all of them. I don't think he's an amazing player by any means. I don't think he's going to be the best in the world or the best in the league in the position, but he's reliable. And I think maybe if you were just sort of getting your head together around a sort of a bit of a turbulent summer and you could get someone like that, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world to get someone in like that and then reformulate your plans around him in the sort of sense of don't ask him to play like Fabinho, but ask him to do what he does, and then you can have Trent and McAllister and whoever around him. I'll be really worried about Calvin Phillips as a signing.
Yeah.
I think City have been proven right in their dealings with players to rivals. It was a bit of a thing last year where it was like, well, they give Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus, and I think by the end of the season everyone went, they did the right thing. They give Sterling to Chelsea, or sold Sterling to Chelsea. He's done nothing like what they did for City. So I wouldn't be touching him personally with a barge pole. Gravenberch, I quite like the idea of Gravenberch coming in before Szoboszlai and McAllister had come in. I'm not sure about him, like Ian says, as playing as that pivot, and that is a big role to ask for someone. You need to be on it, you need to be fit, you need to be sort of consistent, and I would have doubts about that. I would much prefer Gravenberch coming into a rotation as a sort of a number 8, a bit further forward, and if you're good 1 in 3 to start with, then that's fine. To go from the first day at Stamford Bridge, probably not. And there's a few others. I mean, I've got a sly little thing for Douglas Luiz at Aston Villa as a player. I think every time I've watched him against Liverpool, I've thought, quite like you've got a bit about you. I know Liverpool sort of were half offered him. He had a contract wrangle last season with Villa, and there was a half whisper that Liverpool might be in for him. I wonder, but probably not from Aston Villa in this summer. And the other thing that's bubbling away is what happens when Liverpool's name flashes up on your mobile screen if you're a club. You go, oh, we know what you want, right? Let's talk. And it's not going to be a nice deal for you. We know you need a midfielder. We know that the clock's ticking. Less than a month to the first game of the season. You need a Fabinho type player. Pay us. And that makes it harder as well for Liverpool. So there's a lot of obstacles to overcome in the next few weeks. Exciting, like I say, but daunting as well.
I think, to be honest, the Gravenberch signing you pointed on it then would have, if he wanted him, he'd have come in before McAllister or Szoboszlai. And if we're bringing him in to replace Fabinho, has he got enough game time in the 6? I'm not interested in Calvin Phillips. Luis, again, the sample size, it's not big. And I think this is massive because when we got rid of Ronaldo, we didn't replace his games. Availability is just as important as ability. So if we're going to lose Fabinho, who's our starting number 6, we need someone who's come in who's going to play games and who's going to be available for games. So of all them players, as you say, safer bet in Amrabat. I mean, I'm not too sure on the exact numbers, how many games he plays per season, his injury record. I'm not that clued up on that. But out of that list, I'm leaning towards Lavia and Amrabat. But again, I'm keen to know exactly how many games they've played. And I think another bearing on this as well is Bajcetic and Jones and Henderson. If Henderson and Fabinho go, we might go big. If one of them goes, I think they might look at Bajcetic and Jones and see whether we can bring in one player and use them.
Well, just as I've got from Transfermarkt, I've got Amrabat's injury history here. He was out for 5 days last season with lumbago. Which is a new one for us, a new one for us to lash in there.
Navi will have had that.
At some point. But that could be why he's out for Werder Bremen right now. The lumbago, is it? He missed 4 games last season, and then the season before he missed 3 in there as well. A couple of issues occasionally with his back, lashed in, but that's the nature of that position when you're going up for things all the time and those little bits and pieces. Just to clarify, is there anything outside the obvious? You know, there's the names that have been bandied about. Szoboszlai comes a bit from left field. I don't think it was quite as left field as it was framed as being after the fact, but it comes a bit from left field. Ian, is there anyone who you think, oh, you know what, Douglas Luiz is one of them, you know, a little bit of someone who you might not have thought of at this stage that they might look at?
I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if it happens because, you know, the list is the list, but Liverpool have got, you know, no reason to tell everyone who the list might be, and you would not be surprised if a name just comes out of nowhere and it's not one of the names that have been bandied around by various journalists, because Liverpool have kept it to themselves, as they should do. So there might well be a surprise. I think for me, where I keep landing with it is just the concern around maybe that little kind of bit of experience if you are losing people like Henderson and Fabinho, because don't get me wrong, to upgrade on them in terms of what we've seen in the last 12 months, of course you can upgrade on them, but you want to be thinking about, well, what did Fabinho's best version look like? That's the kind of level you want to be driving back towards, and it's very difficult to do that because at his very best, he was one of the best in the world in that position. And I'm banging into Liverpool all of a sudden having energy and legs and bringing the profile of the squad down, because that's been something they should have been driving towards for a while. So I'm banging into that, but at the same time, you are going in with a little bit of caution because it's all happening so quick. And whilst there are clear weaknesses to Jordan Henderson and Fabinho now in terms of what they are as footballers, they are bringing a lot of experience. They do understand what the manager wants from them in terms of, you know, even some of that leadership stuff that people try and play down, but it is important. And we might have to accept, if they are bringing someone in from a different league, there could be an adjustment period. You know, you talk a lot about Rodri and how good he is now. He wasn't that version when he walks through the door. It takes him 12 months. He's on a bit of a journey, becomes probably arguably the best number 6 in the world, but it takes him a little bit of time to understand what the manager's asking from him. And also, you think back to Fabinho's own kind of journey with Liverpool. You think about that Arsenal game, fucking hell, he's all over the place. It takes him a while, and it's not a criticism of him. He's being asked to do something totally different by a different manager who puts different demands on players. And you have to accept that there could be a settling in period. So again, they've got to have an eye on that. If you're lining up against Chelsea, first game of the season, and they're a very specific case, they are also mad. But if you're lining up with a brand new midfield, potentially, it's a big ask to suddenly just kind of all settle in. You've known your teammates for a matter of weeks, and you're all going to hit the ground running. You're all going to know where each person needs to be. That's a big shift, that. And I think that's where, if I am a little bit nervous, it's because there's so much change in a short space of time.
I think there's a silver lining to it a little bit as well, though. That Liverpool saw it last season, what it was like without those two. They took them both out in the middle of the season. They actually said, this can't go on. We're going to have to change. And they changed. And two things really came out of it. Bajcetic came out of it, and Trent came out of it in midfield. So they have mitigated probably inadvertently, they've mitigated against just how important Fabinho was. Like I say, 2 years ago, I think if you took him out, it would be like a Jenga tower, and it would have been, well, what's gone on here? At least now it's like, well, okay, we can play a bit of a different way. We can have Trent on the ball a lot in midfield, and the defensive midfielder alongside him maybe doesn't have to do as much in that sense of sort of setting the tone and the tempo. But as Ian says, I mean, I think one thing that's come out of it, you mentioned tactical flexibility and versatility. That's fair enough, but there are some specialists that you have to have, and you look at the top teams in the league. Arsenal have got Declan Rice, City have got Rodri, United have got Casemiro, Chelsea spent 100 million on Enzo Fernandez. They've all got one of them, so they're not, none of them are sort of going Phil Foden. Do you want to sit there and sort of play holding midfielders, or Kai Havertz? They're not doing that. There are certain players that you do need a specialist in there, and I think that's why this is so disruptive for Liverpool, because it's one of the few specialists really they have. It's probably Alisson, Trent, Van Dijk, Salah and Fabinho were probably the ones who are the most unique sort of players in their positions, aren't there? The others you could sort of say, well, if you lose Luis Diaz for a few months, you'll find a way. If you lose Darwin Nunez, but Fabinho is one of those that's a bit different.
The idea though of inside the squad, Neil, I'll come back to you on it. Jones plays well. I want to be clear about this. Liverpool should buy one. If Fabinho goes, they should buy two. If Henderson goes, this isn't what I'm not saying. What I'm saying here is about the idea of being able to get a bit of a bridgehead, where if someone does come in and is finding it difficult or is finding it like a bit of a learning curve, Jones plays well there deep in the under-21s. Thiago Alcantara actually still profiles statistically really strong in the position. Obviously, a question around both availability and height. That makes it a little bit tricky, but I agree with what Ian said before. I don't believe he's a markedly different player to the one who turned up, Thiago Alcantara. I don't think that it's not the ravages of time on him. It's just availability as a question. Bajcetic, as you mentioned already in there, McAllister's done bits a little bit deeper. We'll come on to Jordan Henderson in a minute, but those footballers are, if Liverpool need to have one of them where for the first 4 games, whoever it is who comes in for whatever fee isn't playing, there are at least options there to have a bit of a holding position.
Yeah, they did that with start of the 2021 season, the quadruple chasing season. Milner started in there, didn't he? And got
Milner, Kieran and Chamberlain were the first start of the first midfield first game,
got up to speed, didn't he? And eventually they came in. So I agree that there are options there. None of them are perfect, are they? Curtis had a really good end to the season, but it would feel like a bit of a typical Curtis thing to sort of go, there you go, you've had a great thing, go back now and do a bit more, and we'll all moan at you when you can't sort of put your foot in hard enough and win headers, and that would be a bit sort of like, oh god,
But if it's that up, not starting, what I would say is McAllister's likely to start that position on the left-hand side higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, McAllister's played in a sort of, we've seen him do it quite a bit. Sort of a bit of both for Brighton, haven't we? In that sense, so I don't think it. The only thing is, he obviously wasn't signed to do that, was he? I don't think he was signed with the idea that you're going to play holding mid for Liverpool. Bajcetic is one, because I think we don't yet know quite what he's going to be, in the sense of we all see the potential in there, but it's probably we haven't yet seen him in the position that I actually think he'll end up being, which is a number 6. but we don't know what type of player he is because he's not developed yet. He's played 20 games and he's broken down. So you have to sort of be prepared for that. It's the same. I have the same feeling with Lavia a little bit, where it's like you're going to get that peak and trough with him a little bit, just naturally, and it's worse when
development's not linear.
It's a lot worse when you're a £50 million sign as well, and you're having those little moments where people are going, "What have we done? What have we bought this lad for?" So it is difficult. Thiago, but Thiago's a very specific type of player that you play, and then obviously if he does break down, you're right back at square one where you're like, okay, we're having to change the way we play. I mean, there's a lot of football if you played Thiago and Trent in a midfield duo. You'd be very disappointed if you ever gave the ball away. And I think Trent's the one. I think Trent's the one that's the most interesting out of them all, because I do think there's a scenario where Liverpool say to him, "Okay, there's your moment. We'll try you
pure
for the
six.
season.
Go back to 4-3-3, pure six.
We'll try you for the season, and we'll have to do something right back." I genuinely think there is a possibility there, and
I've always thought that's where if he's going to midfield, that's always thought where I thought he's going to end up. Maybe in a double pivot, you could go to something like sort of 4-2-4 or 4-2-3-1 and put someone else in there next to him. But I think if it's 4-3-3. The only area he can play in a 4-3-3, I think that isn't right back, is the number 6. That's the only area that I think he can play.
I think it's a huge risk, obviously, because like I say, it's an important position, and he's a completely different type of player. He's a bit more. He's got range in his passing, but he's also. He looks in the games he's played in there that he actually also wants to have loads of touches as well of the ball and do all these creative things. So that would out of the inside the squad, he would be the one that if you said to me, pick one, and he's going to be your 6 at Stamford Bridge, but he's got to be in the squad already. Trent.
My concern with that is if as a period of time goes where it's not working, or Trent needs to come out the side because it's not his natural position. People are saying he's getting exposed there. Then we're back exactly where we started, and we haven't signed anyone. So, although he's definitely out of the list, definitely capable of playing there. That's a slight concern. Mentioned before, jumped the gun a little bit about Jones, because I know he had a really strong Euros and he has played a little bit deeper for England. And I think if you're looking at Jones and Bajcetic and you've got full faith in them, probably room to sign one and then use inside the squad. I think if Henderson and Fabinho go, it's probably going to have to be a big one and then a Lavia. I think if just Fabinho goes, I think we can probably bring in one top player and use sparingly that list there, whether it's Thiago in for a certain game or whether it's Jones drop, or just at the bottom of the list, whether Henderson slots in there, because we've seen him do before.
I think the idea here of, I think both Jones and Thiago, whilst the different players, the similarity they've got is they both retain possession really, really strongly, really, really well. And I think that if Liverpool did feel as though for a bridgehead, as I say, if Fabinho goes, they should definitely buy one. If Henderson goes as well, they should definitely buy 2. But if Liverpool are thinking about a bridgehead, the idea of being able to say, all right, we're going the way we ended last season. McAllister doesn't give it away very much. Jones doesn't give it away very much. Thiago doesn't give it away very much. Trent, as Neil says, doesn't give it away very much. Van Dijk doesn't give it away very much. That whilst you might not have a clear lighthouse lad who goes and wins it back for you, Liverpool should be able to go into games and say, well, our plan is that we're going to dominate possession. And Jones, I think, could offer that in conjunction with Thiago if they wanted to do that for a period and not change the shape or put Trent at 6.
Yeah, and I think you can definitely do that. I understand what Neil says about a couple of comments about heading the ball or, not being able to put the same type of tackles in as Fabinho. But then we fall into that territory of the tribute tackle, trying to sign exactly the player, exactly the same size, exactly the same pace. And it doesn't have to necessarily have to be like that. I think if Bajcetic continues to improve the way he did, then I think you said before, he's not even a small lad, is he? I think he's 6'1", so I don't even think
he's big enough. He's really good in the air as well.
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, I'm confident in Bajcetic based on what I've seen last season. I think he's going to be a great player. But if you were to put him in every single week, starting in the 6, then I'm starting getting a little bit nervous now. Do you know what I mean?
None of this is an argument not to buy. You've got to buy.
No, you've got to buy. This is the problem. So when you talk about, because what I'm hearing around the table here is there's lots of really fair suggestions, but a lot of it also feels like, well, in this game we could do this, and then we could do this for a bit, and then we could do this for a bit. You need fucking certainty in the middle of the park. You just do. There has to be a relationship between your 2 centre halves and what's just in front of them. And Neil outlined before all of the teams and what their options are. And the one thing is no matter what, that player nearly always plays. He nearly always plays, and don't get me wrong, you can sign a lad, he can get injured, but you need certainty and you want consistency in that area of the pitch. And I think, you can't really be hanging your hat on a Thiago or a Bajcetic for different reasons. Thiago availability, Bajcetic, he's 18. You should never be hanging your hat on an 18-year-old. Liverpool Football Club should not be doing that anyway.
I agree with you, but you go back to your Rodri point earlier on. The thing about Rodri was he was coming in and Fernandinho was still getting dropped in for certain games, pulled in here, Rodri gets subbed, Fernandinho would do you know what I mean? There was an element of that. My point is, my argument is Liverpool, whatever they do, even if they go and get the best one, if they get, let's say Florentino Luis is the best one, they still need to have this is what we're going to do to integrate him over a period of time. They have to have that up move.
And that was probably Liverpool's plan. So they have Fabinho, and he's your Fernandinho, and he just comes in and does a little bit of steering the ship every now and again, and you learn from him and all that. But that ship may well have sailed now. So what you do, and I think someone like Trent, who has got all the ability in the world, and I've got no doubt he could play that position, certainly from an on-the-ball point of view, because he can dictate and he can do all the things that you talked about before in terms of progressing it and carrying it and all that. But off the ball, he'd be learning on the job. Now, I know he was a midfielder, but he's not played it at this level. It is different, and you'd be learning on the job, and I'm not sure how comfortable I am with someone learning on the job when we're supposed to be getting back to where we were 2 years ago. Are we just accepting that we're going to have another season where it might be a bit shit for large parts? I'm not happy with that.
That's the other thing, isn't it? It's so desperate to get back. So you come off a bad season. If this was coming off the quadruple season, do you know what?
You got forward it a little bit.
Sort of breathe out a little bit, we're gonna change it. But this is coming on the back. So suddenly you're 2 years out the Champions League. If you haven't done it, suddenly Virgil van Dijk hasn't got back to the level that you were at, and you're going, oh my God, we're gonna have to get rid of him. Andy Robertson's 30 now. Mo Salah's got 1 year left on his contract. All of a sudden you're in this.
Got 2 years left.
It's this idea that it's gone. It's gone. The ship's sunk or the sinking. So there's that pressure as well that comes with it, which could be for Curtis Jones, for Bajcetic, for Romeo Lavia if he was to come in.
Alexander-Arnold.
For Trent, could be just what they want, actually. Give me that. I'll fix this. It could be, but it's just as likely, really, to be one where it's like, oh, this poor lad, this poor lad is being asked to do too much. He's sinking. That could be easily the case. So it's. I keep going back to it. It is really. I am actually. I saw your clip. I think it was where you said you just got to be all in on this excitement. I am quite excited for it, but ask me at the end of August and we'll see where we're at.
Henderson then, as time's ticking on, the hypocrisy, the vagaries and the next steps. Ian Ryan, I want to be really clear about this. There's politics in everything. There's politics in football, there's politics in life. Politics and, for me, fundamental human rights are two quite different things. Also, Henderson has made himself a special case, Ian, and I think that's what people have found and will find difficult. Not everyone, and I understand that, even if I don't agree with it. Very questionable attitudes by established Western standards towards women and the LGBT community. And there's question marks for anyone choosing to go there. But I think where Jordan Henderson's concerned, Ian, what's difficult is that Henderson has repeatedly gone out of his own way. And I think this is a key part here. He has gone out of his way to be very, very clear that he views football as being for absolutely everyone. To take his football and go to a place where a country is not set up for absolutely everyone, I think is a remarkably difficult and murky position that he's put himself into. And I think it's an exceptionally difficult circle for him to square before we go any further and have a conversation in a practical football sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. So we did a reaction show maybe less than a week ago now, and we talked a little bit about kind of how it looks from a Henderson's point of view, maybe compared to one or two others. And I think your point's right. It does boil down to he's gone out to bat on a number of occasions for the LGBTQ plus community when he didn't have to. No one asked him, but he went out and done that. Now, to then suddenly go and say, well, it was important to me then, but I'm getting offered all this money now, and it's less important. The optics don't look great, and I think that's where people will, in my opinion, and rightly so, have an issue with Jordan making that move. It doesn't feel like it's being particularly handled very well with his camp either, in terms of what is going on. The silence is deafening here, but I don't like it, Neil, to be honest, and I think some people will just take the view of it's loads of money and he's 33 and all that. It is loads of money and it is life-changing money, but he's already on life-changing money. I know it's not quite the same amount as what he might be getting if he goes over there, but what are your principles worth? And it looks to me like Jordan Henderson's he wants to move because nothing else is coming out from the camp. If he wanted to quash this, he could have quashed this ages ago. It's been dragging on for a week now, and we've heard nothing. So you can only assume from that he feels the deal is likely to happen, and he also wants the deal as well. But I think, we did something last week, didn't we, with, is it Paul from Cop Outs? And he spoke about, why it's important to him that Jordan should turn the move down. You can't really argue it, to be honest, because, as I say, if you're going to really commit, and in his own words, stand shoulder to shoulder with a group of people, and then just kind of turn the other cheek when a load of money gets thrown at you, you can see why that's going to piss people off a little bit. And I think that's where he struggled to square it. For me, Jordan Henderson has done lots of fabulous things for the football club, both on and off the pitch. But this is one where you're looking at it and going, fucking hell, Jordan, it smacks of hypocrisy. And that's where it's a hard one to swallow, I think.
The notion of Henderson, Keogh, as captain, a lot of it has been, it's been this idea of the way in which he views him, the way in which he is viewed culturally, the way in which he's viewed by the wider football community. You've got the period of time under COVID, for instance, where there was that sort of stuff around, captain of the captains, leading from the front, post Super League, where he goes out of his way to, he's the first one who puts the, we don't like this, we're not in favour of it. He seemed to have a level of consciousness about him that doesn't feel as though it is in part public relations, don't get me wrong, because a lot of things that hugely successful individuals do and have is strong public relations, but it's felt as though it's all come from the heart. Even things like his programme notes before the last game of last season, when he talked about the other players, it's all felt as though there's a genuine sort of emotional connection, here within this, the LGBT stuff, but also literally the way in which women are second-class citizens in the country that he's going to. To have espoused this idea that, you see football in its wider social context and then say, but at this key moment for me, the wider social context doesn't matter, is exceptionally difficult to stomach.
Yeah, it's the way it keeps getting mentioned. It's hypocrisy, and there's no denying that. I think there's going to be two types of supporters if it happens. There's going to be the ones who see the money and go, well, what would you do type of thing, lad, because everyone's working on a normal wage and we're all normal people, but we're not millionaires already, and that's quite easy to do. But then, as you say, he's been the perfect captain. He's been the perfect captain for Liverpool. He's represented the city well. He's the COVID thing. I'm not going to go through the points you just mentioned because you've mentioned it already. Now, even if he doesn't move on, but it comes to light that he accepted this deal and he wanted this deal, and whether it broke down because of the backlash or it broke down because of a transfer fee, where does that leave his captaincy? Where does that leave where we're at right now with him? Can he accept 700 grand a week, but then it break down over a transfer fee and then wear the armband and then go and do this community stuff for LGBTQT, etc., etc.? I don't know. Whether it'll just the PR machine or just brush it under the carpet that much that he can just continue to do his role at Liverpool because nothing was ever officially said and he never accepted anything, and we just move on, or whether it's going to get raised time and time again by these groups.
What's difficult, where insofar as I've got any sympathy, and I really don't think I have, Neil, but we'll just pretend I have for the purposes of argument for a second, is we've just, for instance, talked about Fabinho going for 30 minutes and not one of us has raised this point. And that's where, from the captain's point of view, if you wanted to have sympathy, you could go, well, hang on, he's done all this work. The other footballer does it, you've not mentioned it. Where's your show slagging off Gerrard? Now, I had to do something talking about Gerrard behind the paywall, but not on this show. It didn't come up here. We didn't feel as though we need to lash it in there. Other bits and pieces. Well, where's your bill on Firmino? All that sort of stuff. I can see how that argument can be made, but it's because of the ways in which he's made himself different.
Yeah, no, I don't buy that either.
Good.
Yeah, I think I followed the golf story a lot with Saudi Arabia, and there was this this sort of party line that Ian Poulter and Lee Westwood and Sergio Garcia and all these people, we're just here to play golf. We're just here to focus on the golf. I think Fabinho can say that if he wants. I think Firmino can say that. I don't think Jordan Henderson can say that, because you don't just focus on the golf or the football. You deliberately don't focus on that, and you've benefited from not doing that. I think in terms of reputation, in terms of, I think you got Player of the Year, Footballer of the Year, because of that kind of way that you are. I don't think anyone really thinks he was the best footballer of that year, but he got it because he did the most. It'd be like Marcus Rashford suddenly turning around and saying, "You just can go hungry." You can't square that. Once you nail yourself to the mast like that, you have to deal with what comes after it, and if that means that you limit your earning opportunities, or it means that you limit your career pathways, that's what you've chosen. And alternatively, it means that when you renege on it, then you're going to have to answer the questions. And I agree with Keogh. I think he'll leave. first and foremost. I think he'll go. But if he doesn't, I think he can't be the captain of Liverpool anymore. How can he sit there with a rainbow armband on Pride Week? You know, how can he continue to be that? Well, you weren't, were you? Because, you know, unless the only way you could do it is if he came out and just went, I don't know where this has come from, by the way, guys. Like, you know, this was never, you know, and it's true. You know, it was never in there. It was always just put out there. And that's obviously not going to happen. So I don't, yeah.
Why I find it like I keep oscillating between finding it unbelievably funny, not least the idea that it might fall through when he's done all of this. Like, I feel as though there should be some sort of comparison. There should be a Greek myth or something that you're able to pull on and cite. It feels like a Curb Your Enthusiasm storyline. If it falls through for him, it really does. But on the one hand, but as I say, I get to say that sitting here as a straight white fella in Liverpool, that I get to point at it and say that'd be ridiculous. But where I find it deeply sad and what really concerns me about it, Neil, is I feel as though even where we are now will preclude footballers from feeling as though they're going to speak out about issues moving forward. Like, genuinely, that's what he's already done that for me. He's already created that circumstance with this. And I think that is so deeply miserable that I think he's going to remove the ability of footballers to act as advocates and activists, because everyone who represents a footballer will be saying, don't do that, lads, because remember Jordan Henderson?
Yeah, and you remember the backlash when politicians urged footballers to do that, didn't he? Politicians basically said, shut up, stop sticking your nose in. And it felt like a real movement. A lot of footballers across the world, but in England in particular, said, no, we are going to do that. Now, this has come up. And the other thing about Henderson is he will be the one who's kicked the gate down for English footballers going there. He'll be the first hype. I mean, Gerrard's done it, but he's a current active England international, Premier League winner, England vice captain, still playing at a good level. You know, there will be now players whose argument for going to Saudi Arabia is he did.
It's easier if Henderson does it.
He did, yeah. You know, he did. I look up to him. He was lifting the European Cup when I was coming through in the academy. I'm going. So it opens up that as well. The idea that before they've even got the chance to speak out, they're already over there and they're already taking the book and they're taking the money. I mean, I think the other thing is it just doesn't look like this isn't going to be a China sort of gone in a year. This is here to stay, isn't it? You know, Cristiano Ronaldo's there, Karim Benzema's there. They're taking 26-year-old players out of clubs. They're taking Fulham's top scorer and Wolves as captain and potentially Riyad Mahrez and all these people. Yeah, this is here to stay. And I think it's a very fair point that you make. Actually, I hadn't even considered it, but I think it will stop a few people going, don't do what Jordan Henderson did and basically be yourself. You know, you're going to pay the price for that somewhere down the line.
It might not happen. There's vagaries around it, Ian. You know, found a few things out over the weekend, speaking to people in different ways. 4 clubs have been invested in by the PIF. 4 clubs have had different forms of what passes for private investment insofar as Saudi Arabia is concerned. This is not one of those 8. There's a cash on hand point. I think it's entirely a cash on hand point. There's a little bit of history before this move with these 8 clubs of Saudi Arabian teams not paying wages or fees and having to go to FIFA. That has happened, but the situation is arguably different post these 8 clubs. Even though it's owned by the Ministry of Sport, though, you know, there's therefore a process if the money isn't there. I'm staggered by the fact that there doesn't appear to have been clarity, whether it happens or not. I'm staggered by the fact that there doesn't appear to have been clarity as to whether or not there is money for a transfer fee before this has even started. If I was Jordan Henderson's agent, it would have been my first question: can you pay a transfer fee if Liverpool demand one? Because Liverpool are going to demand one.
That's what I can't get my head around. How's it got this far? Because you would think someone in his camp, in Henderson's camp, would have said, okay, yeah, this is the money on offer to me. I'm assuming, you know, there's no issue with paying Liverpool because don't let me go for free. You know, I'm the captain of the football club, and yes, he's 33, but Liverpool still hold the cards. He's got 2 years left on his deal. There's absolutely no chance why we should just wave him off on a free transfer. Why would we do that? It's bonkers. So I can't get my head around that bit. Oh yeah, we're going to pay the player an insane amount of money, potentially 700 grand a week. But by the way, selling club, you're getting fuck all, and you've got to cough for that. In what world are Liverpool accepting that? There is no world where they accept that. And I don't know how this has not been thought through, but it is clearly a massive issue now, and people are going to look pretty stupid. And Jordan Henderson's sitting there at the minute. and he's not said anything. So you can only assume by the silence that he does, as I said before, he wants this move to go through. Otherwise, within minutes of it breaking, he could have come out and gone, nothing to do with me, that. I don't know where that's come from. I'm committed to staying and fighting for Liverpool Football Club on all fronts. I'm the captain of the club, and that's a huge honour. And it is a huge honour, by the way. And I'm at 33, I'm shocked at, and I know the money is massive, and I'm not downplaying it because it is huge, but giving up that role, that comes along once in a lifetime. And he's just going to go, I'm going to go and play me football in a league that's so far removed from the level I'm playing at. I'm captain of one of the biggest clubs in the world. If they go on and win another big trophy, I'm the man who gets to lift it. And he might not play every week, but he'll still play a part. He's the same age pretty much as what James Milner was when Milner was helping Liverpool win a European Cup and a league title.
Just on that quick, I'll come back to you on it. For me, it just doesn't look like a barrel of laughs. If the money for him is touch and go, for instance, he's going to be on vastly more than all of his teammates. I refuse to believe, this is a side that finished 7th in this division last season. It doesn't look as though it's not like Fabinho is going to go and join N'Golo Kante. It feels as though Henderson's going to be the best player. He's going to go in, he's going to be the best player. And I'll be honest, I don't want to watch a football team where Jordan Henderson's the best player anyway. But I also don't think you get the best out of Jordan Henderson if Jordan Henderson's the best player. Jordan's strength is getting the best out of other players and providing a platform for them to play. Well, he's going to turn up, be 33 years old, going through the motions here in front of us. A capacity crowd of 25,000. Average attendance last season, 5,200. It just does not look like fucking fun in any meaningful way. And then also, there's all the other stuff that we've talked about, not least the freedoms that are lost and given away for your family and stuff like that.
No, exactly. And obviously it is a different level of football. But I still don't know if it's Jordan Henderson going over there and turning into prime Gerrard. Box to box and scoring.
He's going over there to hang around with Gerrard.
And scoring,
I think he's going over to be assistant manager.
And scoring 20 odd goals a season. That's not happening. So your point's right. All of a sudden they're looking to him saying, fucking hell, you're on 700 grand a week. Sort this out for us. Because, that is what it feels like. He is going over there and potentially is going to be their star, their best player. And that's never been Jordan Henderson's game. And as I say, obviously the level is different, but the expectations on him will be huge. But I just can't come away from the fact that he probably still has, whilst not being anywhere near his peak, he still has things to offer for a year or two. Both on and off the pitch. And I know we've downplayed his off the pitch stuff in terms of what's gone on recently, but before and up to that point, there'd been loads of good stuff he'd done off the pitch. But on the pitch, you could have seen him taking that Milner role forward a little bit. And he may say, well, I don't want that. I want to play more often. So you want to play more often, but in a league that's so far below where you are now, what would you rather have? And that's where I'm struggling to square it a little bit, other than I understand the amounts on offer are insane, but back to the point, you only spend so much money, you can only earn so much money. And I know people are talking about, well, it's generations, he can look after all of his kids and his grandkids. He can probably do that now. He's on about £7 to £9 million a year. It is already life-changing money, but listen, at the end of the day, he's his own man, he'll make his own decisions.
Made a point about the silence from Henderson means he's definitely considering this, otherwise he'd just shut it down pretty quick. But do you reckon Liverpool stand on it? Do you reckon Liverpool are happy for this transfer to go through, in the sense of it's 180 grand a week off the wage bill while we're trying to sign other midfielders? Is it potentially he's not going to play that much? We give him a big deal a couple of years ago. Now it's looking like he's not going to play as much as you might have thought. Do you reckon they just shut it down pretty quick, wouldn't they? They say he's not for sale.
I'll come on to that in a minute, because I think if Henderson goes, it makes the Fabinho thing easier for Liverpool. I actually think that the idea of there being 2 vacancies makes it easier for Liverpool to recruit. So I think that for Liverpool, it's almost like that's great, because we get to do the thing where we go and buy the one. Let's use as an example, we do Amrabat and Lavia off the basis of the fact that we're getting a couple of years out of Amrabat, who's going to offer a great deal to us and stability, but we think Lavia is going to be the coming force and he could be the best one in the country. I think that helps them. I think that's their argument. Neil, last word on all the practical aspects of it, away from literally what Liverpool will do. I am gobsmacked by it the more and more I think about it. I agree with you in that I think that somehow it'll happen, because I think it's difficult. I think literally the Saudi Arabian League now loses face if this one club can't find the money to buy him, if you know what I mean. Like, I think that things might well be in motion to try to get them the cash on hand, because Liverpool should also be asking for a lot of that money up front.
Oh yeah. I mean, we'll know, won't we, on Wednesday? I think we'll get a good read on it, because what's the first question Jurgen Klopp's going to get asked around the Karlsruhe game? I'm going, so I can guarantee that it will be. But we will. That'll be the first time, if it's not done by then, which I wouldn't be amazed if it's moved significantly forward. Is he going to play in that game? What's the manager going to say? Because the manager, you know what he's like. The manager can't poker face it and go, I don't know what you're about. He will say what's going on, in whether it's overtly or more covertly. So we'll know, I think, by the time Liverpool have certainly finished that friendly, or the press conference has finished that friendly on Wednesday. So I think, I'm pretty convinced Jordan Henderson's leaving Liverpool for all the reasons we've outlined, and that leaves them with a lot to do.
But do you think it's easier for them to do 2 than 1?
No.
Don't you?
No, I just think it's...
I think it makes the decision-making process easier.
I know what you mean. It's easier to nail down what you're doing, but you've got to recruit 2 players, and Liverpool have had trouble recruiting. The 2 players they've recruited have got release clauses. They haven't negotiated for anyone this summer. So they're going to have to do that for 2 players unless they find another couple of release clauses. You're replacing 700 games. 700 games these 2 have played between them for Liverpool. Won everything. Both played together. It's not a case of one plays and the other one doesn't. So you only have to really replace one spot. Two spots in the team. So it's really difficult. I think it can be done. I think Liverpool can come out of it strong still and have a good season. But when we talk about them in the past of, God, they get their recruitment right. Here we go. Let's see if you do.
Yeah, well, I'm just still trying to work out whether what they're going to do. I mean, we've covered everything, and I don't think I've come away from this understanding it any better. I mean,
all right, Kieran, don't pull the whole house of cards down around.
No, you know what I'm saying, though. I mean, like, he's right. It's 2 players who start every week, and looking back over recent years, if they do both leave, Liverpool aren't going to go out and blow loads of money on 2 players that is on everyone's list. It's not going to happen like that. So, I mean, I don't know where we go. I mean, I think if the fact that Fabinho stayed and Henderson's gone, for me, I mean, Neil thinks he's going to leave still. I think Henderson's more likely going to stay now, to be honest. That's my opinion. So we're probably going to replace him 1, which is just Fabinho.
Easier to do 2 than 1?
I'm not sure it is. I know what you're saying in terms of they can kind of almost sculpt it in a way where they're going to go and get a more experienced one, and they're going to get maybe a project type player as opposed to just making a decision on either or. But back to Neil's point around, recruitment and the point I made earlier, there is other parts of the team that still need addressing, in my opinion, and they are sleeping on this fucking centre half defensive.
I think they just want Colwell.
Numbers.
I think until they know about Colwell, they're not going to do a thing until they know about Colwell. But then if they are going
to do someone with Trent, there's talk about maybe getting someone who can play centre half and right back. There's obviously the Colwell shout as well, but let's not forget, first home game last season, Nat Phillips starts, and the same defenders are still all there, because the issue was then, and it still is now, a number of those lads have got checkered history records when it comes to injuries, and that does concern me, Neil.
That was a mad decision, by the way, not least because Joe Gomez came on and looked great. Anyway, separate. When I was doing season review stuff, I looked back at that game, I was staggered that Nat Phillips had started. Then I remember that Gomez came on and looked great.
Gomez had a doubt, didn't he? I think that's what it was. But it did look mad because he came on and played well. But that Joe Gomez question still exists in terms of his level, as it does with Matip. And the Canate wants more about injuries and just keeping him fit and firing. And Virgil's a year older. It's a little bit worrying for me, that centre-half position, that they're not really addressing it. Or if they are, it is that guy that you've mentioned, Colwell, but getting him out of Chelsea doesn't look like an easy task. I think
they're not going to do a thing anywhere else there until you know either way if he's doing a year at Chelsea or not. I think that's all that is, and that should hopefully also be clear this week. Loads of things will be clear this week. There's loads and loads to come on the Anfield Wrap. I'm doing a stat show about a lot of footballers. It's going to be put out for free this afternoon. We'll put that one out for free. Loads and loads of names will be going through that one as options built around a specific profile of footballer that I think Liverpool are looking for. Neil Jones has got a Substack. You should sign up, not least because you're going to be writing every hour on the hour across the course of the week. He was doing a bit there whilst we were doing this, just working a couple of paragraphs out. I'm sure it is the business. I've been enjoying reading it. It is everything that you need in digestible form about what Liverpool are up to. Lots and lots going on. Are you playing anywhere anytime soon? Got any gigs coming up?
I have. I don't think I'm supposed to say this just yet, but I'm going out to Singapore next week. Do some shows. Yeah, so I think it's going to be announced in the next couple of days, but anyone watching this has just found out. So yeah, I'm in Singapore.
Exclusive content, excellent stuff indeed from Keo. Download the app, support the Anfield Wrap, do everything you can. There's loads and loads of shows to come. There's loads and loads to talk about. That was a big hour, and we barely scratched the surface.